Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Vols ATB podcast. And man, got a crazy episode here. Obviously, crazy. It's really weird. We don't really do many Monday shows, so it's kind of a little different from our normal schedule. But with all the breaking news, around the football program, Nico being out, Tennessee got their quarterback today. We're going to break that down. Picking up the biggest commitment in Tennessee basketball history. Nate Ament makes it official. He's all of all. And so we're going to, hop into some names that we're going to mention that are in the transfer portal that Tennessee is currently contacting. But Drew, first off, man, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Brando. Outside the sports world, I'm doing fantastic. Had a great little Easter weekend trip over to Asheville. Always great being in, North Carolina. But in the sports world, not good, Brando. Not good in the slightest. This was the worst case scenario in my mind as far as finding Nico's replacement. And we had just completed, we just had a father figure that demanded $4 million and saw, something that we've never seen before in college football and college athletics. And coincidentally, within a week later, we've seen the first thing ever in college athletics history, a complete trade up with one school to the other, with Nico going to UCLA and Joey Aguilar going from UCLA over to Tennessee. But we'll break it down a little bit. But yeah, not great in the slightest.
Yeah, man. This time last week, I think we were getting ready for our spring game. It was not even last week, right before the spring game. Obviously, we did our first show in a while. Nico Iamaleava was out the program. Tennessee was quarterbackless 24 hours before the spring game. Contract negotiations were full set, and Tennessee decided to pretty much walk away and part ways with Iamaleava and his family. The whole spring game vibe was pretty much weird, but Tennessee kind of figured they had to go into the portal and get a quarterback, get a proven guy. We saw the headlines. Tennessee tried to be aggressive. Obviously, Josh Hoover staying at TCU. There was rumors about if Tennessee was going out there and trying to encourage talks with other, quarterbacks that weren't in the portal yet. Obviously, it seems like so many things kind of happened there. But Tennessee finds their way. Joey Aguilar does enter the portal today after UCLA makes it official, adding Iamaleava. And yeah, man, it's kind of weird. Like the most unintentional trade that kind of worked out for both teams. Obviously, Tennessee, swung and missed at some big names. This wasn't their first option, but you're ending up with an experienced quarterback, a guy that has 1 year left. The stats, the numbers, they look good, but Drew does not, share to mention the interceptions and the turnover rate that was present at Appalachian State. Obviously brought at UCLA on a $1 million deal. He's going to be making more money here, around the same, but less in taxes going to be coming out. So looks like Tennessee saves $1.2 million annually. And if they can go out there and, spend that money to get some weapons, maybe, just maybe, we go into the season feeling better about this, Drew. But overall, man, in my opinion, not the worst case scenario. And just all depends on how Hype was able to incorporate this guy into the system, this early before the season.
Yeah, look, like the guy, if you watch his film, the guy is not afraid to throw the football. In a way, he's almost a little too confident with his throws. And, one of the things I've noticed is just a lot of, passes into double coverage. And granted, last year, he did have to deal with the fact of a very weak offensive line and losing a lot of that star power from 23 over to 24. But having said that, man, it's just you needed to get a guy that would have been SEC ready, and a Luke Altmaier from Illinois, a Rocco Becht from Iowa State. Like these are type of guys that would have been a great fit, that would have been, at the same level as Nico, if not, even an upgrade. And this would have encouraged other guys, in those wide receiver positions and other spots as well to be able to come to Tennessee knowing that they have a solidified and a good quarterback. And that's not to say that Joey Aguilar can't be great here. He certainly could. He threw over 3,000 yards this past year. I think he had like close to 30 touchdowns. And then the year prior to that, he had 3,700 yards and 33 TDs. Like he's talented. It's just the decision-making is the really major concern thing for me. And, if this was back in December or January when we brought him in and this was a whole entire ordeal, I would say, like, okay, we got 6, 7 months to be able to work with him, be able to make sure that we get the right decision making, and that, we could be able to salvage the year on, being an 8 or 9 win team. But, you're talking about he's got less than 4 months, man. I mean, he's got less than 4 months to be able to get comfortable around his teammates, get comfortable in this offense, and on top of that, try to work with Heupel and recognizing the issues that he's had the last couple seasons in the Sun Belt. And the biggest thing for me that is a little bit concerning is that when you look at his stat line from last year, he had 14 interceptions, 12 of those 14 came from in conference play in the Sun Belt. And like let's just call it as it is. Like the Sun Belt Conference is not a good conference at all. It might be arguably the worst conference in college football in Division One. And so this is a little bit concerning because this is going to be a massive step and it's going to be a complete game changer. And it's the first game of the season. We're not playing some podunk team that we're going to win 50-0. We got Syracuse, and Syracuse is coming off a 10-win season and has a really damn good football team as well. So I'm a little bit concerned. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that he works his magic, but man, it's just from everything I've seen, this is a downgrade for Tennessee. This is a downgrade for UCLA, and like both parties overall are just completely worse off altogether.
Yeah, I mean, what's kind of concerning for me is obviously Tennessee was able to go out there and get a veteran guy, but it's not like he had a season at UCLA under his belt. Like he was playing at Appalachian State. And obviously UCLA was very high on this guy to give him $1 million deal and also bring him in under the new staff. I think the offensive coordinator is from Indiana this past season. And obviously that offense was pretty good to, get them in the college football playoffs. But overall, man, I think it's a guy that obviously he had to learn a whole new entire system. And now he has to pivot his mind to learning our system. And I think that Josh Heupel's system might be, more quarterback friendly, or is it, just from a learning curve and being able to learn it quickly. Like we saw this before with Joe Milton, kind of about the same, timeline of him coming in having to learn the system. But we saw how that kind of affected Joe early when he first got here in that Bowling Green game and Pitt game. And I mean, I can, see the vision, just from Heupel and Halsey of, why they went with Aguilar. But I also, the turnovers are definitely a problem. Just watching the highlights. Obviously, you can go and watch a highlight reel, but go and watch some game film. Just watch the situations he was put in, just because of the talent gap from his offensive line and the skill guys not being there like they were in 2023. It was definitely concerning, but I think that under Josh Heupel's system, he's proven with quarterbacks that when he does in that first year with him, their turnover ratio is significantly lower than what it was at previous schools or the year before. So if Heupel can even work his magic and kind of be able to pivot what his negatives are to be able to go out there in the SEC play, it's at this point, Drew, I feel like it's kind of house money. If Tennessee's able to go out here and have a successful season after what happened in the transfer portal, losing your starting quarterback, the NIL child or whatever, and then having to pivot this and go and get a guy and go brand new. I mean, it's pretty much house money, but Tennessee's going to have to, one, get Aguilar to learn the system fairly quickly, and two, get some weapons around him on the offensive line, the wide receiver room. Like you mentioned, if we can't go into this season with 6 or 7 wide receivers, we need experienced guys. And you're seeing Tennessee not being shy of trying to, get some receivers out of the portal. I think they've had 3 or 4 offers in the last 24 hours, and as they should. But I mean, Tennessee has a chance to put all the pieces together, but can Aguilar come in this quickly, learn the system, and be a top quarterback in the SEC? We'll have to wait.
Well, I mean, he's not going to be a top quarterback in the SEC. We don't really need to have that conversation. And we're just going to call a spade. Like Tennessee right now at the moment. Vol guy's actually pretty spot on. He does kind of resemble a little bit of JG. I would say that
dude, he looks just like him, bro.
The resemblance as far as the physical appearance, and really, when you think about his quarterback play too. I mean, a lot of just where you have some throws that are really great, really accurate throws, and then just some mind-numbing decisions to follow up with it as well. But
Andy's getting absolutely rocked. I don't know if you saw, but he's making some throws while getting absolutely destroyed. It kind of is JG-esque against teams like South Carolina and stuff, just old highlights.
But I mean, the thing is I'm just gonna call a spade. Tennessee has a bottom 3 quarterback room in the conference. I think we went from around, I would say, in my opinion, about 8th or 9th to I would say we're probably about 12th or 13th now as far as quarterback rooms in the SEC. And some people might think that's harsh, but when you take in consideration, you got so much improvements with Merck and GMAC as well. And on top of that, just the turnover prone that we've seen of Aguilar. It's hard for me to put it anywhere higher than that. So I mean, I think realistically, if we're gonna, and maybe they'll get some help over in the wide receiver room. But Brando, you and I both know from what we've heard the last couple of days, that was kind of like one of the things that's deterred some guys that were in the Big 12, in the Big 10, these bigger conferences from coming, from their respective schools over to Tennessee. Because let's just be real, man. I mean, there's just so much unproven in the wide receiver room. There's only 6 or 7 guys, and and just call it as it is, this is completely at fault for Heupel and especially Kelsey Pope.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. There was a quarterback in the Big Ten that literally, I don't think the money's been the issue at all for Tennessee in these negotiations. Maybe with Josh Hoover, just because there's been multiple SEC teams that have tried to get him out of the portal, but his loyalty to TCU is so strong. Even Tennessee tried to throw an extra $1 million on there, an extra, 7 digits, Drew, and it wasn't enough. So, I mean, overall, yeah. But yeah, I mean, kind of Tennessee, when they kind of, approach these quarterbacks, I don't think it's the money that's kind of keeping the interest away. You look at the wide receiver room, and literally that was the reason given that, I just don't feel confident coming in, leaving where I am now, having the season I just had to go, where Tennessee just lost the majority of their wide receiver room in the portal, even though it was guys like Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, Squirrel White. I mean, you look at now and you got Braylon Staley, Chris Brazell, Mike Matthews. It hasn't been attractive for Tennessee on that part. And that's why you're seeing them, extend offers to Keelan Marion from BYU or Trayshawn Hurry from San Jose State. Even guys that, didn't have a lot of production, but, had, some upside and, 6'4", just to kind of frame and player they like with multiple years, just to get guys in the room and, try to beef that room up a little bit. I don't think it's been, any kind of money figure or NIL that stopped Tennessee from getting a top portal quarterback.
Money's never been an issue. It's just these QBs are, you have a little bit to work with when it's like right after the end of the season, when it's December and January, and you got about 7 months. You could be able to have a little bit of wiggle room as far as being able to get that type of guy. But when you're talking about, it's less than 100, I mean, we're getting about less than 100 days until football starts. And you're talking about less than 4 months of these guys just learning an entire new scheme and new style of offense. I mean, it's very discouraging. And even throwing, $3, $4, $5 million out there at certain guys, it's hard for them to be able to convince a place that they already know that they're familiar with and that they're comfortable with. You know what I mean? And Vol guy just asked questions like, how quick do you think he learns the offense? Do they dumb it down a little? I don't know if they necessarily dumb it down. They did kind of dumb it down a little bit for Nico last year. And you could especially see that, after the Oklahoma game, as far as like the play calling goes. They may have to simplify it, though. I mean, like, think about, like, at least for guys like, Joe Milton and like Hendon Hooker, like how long it took them to be fully comfortable in the offense, and I don't know if this is something that he could be able to accumulate within 4 months.
So, I mean, Joe Milton committed and transferred to Tennessee April 26, 2021. So, theoretically, Aguilar has 5 more days. And what does 5 more days give him? Who knows? But it obviously gives him at least enough time to have some kind of grasp. Who knows where he is mentally, of how he's able to, process those things, and how Joe was able to process things when he came in. But I do think there's a simple version where Tennessee can go out there and run it, because even though it was, such a short turnaround from when Joe got here against that Bowling Green game, the offense didn't, have a lot of explosiveness, but he had some kind of life. You saw the quarterback run, you saw the options, you saw how he was able to incorporate the little simple
But that's
things.
what I mean, though, right? Like, Hendon got in there in January or December in January, and the moment the Heupel stepped in on campus, like, he was able to learn that offense. And like when Joe came in, you saw a simplified version of it, and you saw the mass difference as far as the play going goes as soon as Hendon got in, and as compared to Joe. And so that's my thing. It's like, it's going to be a 3-way competition, but like Heupel's going to have to make that decision. Like, okay, am I going to go with the guy that's a little bit more experienced, has played more college football, than the other two guys. However, we're going to have to dumb down, as Vol guy kind of like mentioned it, simplify the offense and like make sure that he could be able to run efficiently, or we're going to have the guys like Jake, who's been in the program for a year and a half now, who's a bit comfortable and knows the playbook backwards, forwards, and have him run the ropes.
Well, I mean, the past few years when we talk about our offense and what's been changing about it, one of the main factors besides play calling and obviously pointing to Joey Halsey has been where's Tennessee's tempo, and you're bringing in a brand new quarterback who's having to learn the offense on top of that, but also having to be in a tempo offense for the very first time, and a guy that's made as many mistakes as he did in Sun Belt, obviously making poor decisions, throwing into double coverage. How does that affect a guy that Josh Heupel preaches, playing to the next snap, not letting one play affect you? Is he able to come in? And is that able to benefit him of going fast and kind of knowing where to look, of how simple does Josh Heupel make it to where is it a one receiver route, or does he have multiple options? How quick is he able to learn it? I mean, you got to think about the tempo though. Tennessee, known for going fast, being one of the fastest teams in college football, right up there with Ole Miss. Does Tennessee get back to their identity, or do they have to also be like, okay, we're gonna have to put it off another year and wait until next year, even though Jake might be able to run it? We have to, roll with Joey and just, try to get back to tempo with Faison, Brandon, or whoever is here in 2026. It's just, there's so much to it. And I want to think that tempo is going to be, obviously trouble for him, but maybe, just maybe, it, clears his mind from making those mistakes to where he is able to, make plays.
Yeah, I mean, that is the best case scenario for us, but I can't make a guarantee, statement that like I think Joey Aguilar is going to be the starter come August 30th against Syracuse. Like it's going to be a 3-man competition, and ultimately it's going to have to come down to the fact which guy do they think is going to be able to be the most ready to be able to run the offense as efficient as possible, and someone who's the most comfortable running this offense too. And maybe Joey's that guy. Maybe Joey's going to come in and he's going to take it by fire, and he's going to do a phenomenal job and he's going to learn quick. But man, I mean, we've seen like how complicated that this offense can be, and we've tried to see like versions of it being simplified for the quarterback to work around it, and we haven't gotten that same efficiency as we did with Hendon 3 years ago.
Yeah. And obviously in this transfer portal era, like everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, because the amount of information we were getting like 72 hours ago to leading up to where we are now with Aguilar, being, committed, signed after just a Zoom call. Tennessee moved fast there. Obviously there's so many moving pieces that, the average person wouldn't be able to understand, or just thinking it's, completely, bullshit. But I think Tennessee has definitely, been communicating behind closed doors with a lot more people than, has been made out to the public. And some of those names have, found their way of making it out. And obviously Tennessee was able to, move fast when this happened and kind of, get a little trade. But the transfer portal closes in 72 hours, maybe 96. And I think that I don't know anything, but I think that Tennessee is still, making phone calls, obviously the positions of needs, wide receiver, offensive line. But I think that even behind the scenes, I don't think Tennessee is going to stop calling quarterbacks. I think Tennessee, obviously never say never, try everything. They're exhausting all options. Do they get another guy to enter? Does Tennessee, take a second quarterback just because the experience is so low, or what even happened? Obviously they're going to, not let anything go unturned, but all in all, I think they're trying to get behind Aguilar. And if that is what where we end up, just, putting all the stones around it, man, and playing with house money. But I don't think they're gonna stop calling.
I don't think they'll stop calling either. But like you do have the question where, all right, like we know for a fact that Joey Aguilar is going to be his NIL deal is going to be around like 1.2 million, a little bit higher than that. We know that Tennessee's budget after the news of Nico leaving, entering the portal, that our NIL budget for a quarterback was around 4 million. If you're Tennessee, like, do you take the risk on trying to find a quarterback that's willing to, take 2.8 or 2.5, or would you try to be able to like really throw some high dollar money at some of these guys at wide receiver and try to build that brand? Because you got to look at the bigger picture, because let's be real, Tennessee is one injury away right now in the wide receiver room for being a major danger, where like we're playing walk-ons, the walk-ons being like running the twos. And it is not an ideal situation because we know Amari Jefferson is far from being ready. He might be close, maybe by season opener. You still got Boots trying to get comfortable learning that slot role as well, and you got so much improvement with Rodarius Jackson and Travis Smith as well, who are both just freshmen coming in. So, I mean, you got to think that's a scenario running across their mind. And then again, it's like you just signed Joey Aguilar. What quarterback is going to go in and be like, okay, this is going to go from being a 3-man competition to a 4-man competition. And on top of that, I don't really know if they have any answers at wide receiver. Would I really entertain this? And I think that's a legit question.
In my opinion, if they were able to get a quarterback to enter, I think Joey Aguilar, he had interest kind of there. Like as soon as Tennessee, contacted him, I think Tulane was really interested, and they were about to throw $1 million at Nico. So I think there are options just because Tulane and Wake Forest were interested there. But the perfect fit just in the Tennessee situation, what happened with Nico being able to lock down an SEC starting job, you kind of had to take it. And I mean, honestly, and 72 hours from now, we're probably riding with Aguilar just because getting these guys to enter in. And you can, say all you want about hypotheticals, but nothing's really going to happen until you get these guys to enter in the portal. And I think it's possible. I mean, I think Tennessee's able to, exhaust their options and, throw what they need to throw in there. But, you'd have to see it. Yeah. And the wide receiver position, man, it's definitely not attractive right now. You saw Tennessee obviously offer Keelan Murray, and you saw them offer Trayshawn Hurry. I mean, those two guys are already setting up visits to Tennessee for this weekend. So Tennessee trying to move fast there just because it's not really a money factor. Like we said, it's really just because of what Tennessee's able to kind of showcase and, say this is where you're going to step into and this is, where you're going to be. If you're going to leave, a school that's competing for a conference championship in a different conference, it has to be some kind of appealing probably.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly. I mean, it's going to be appealing for a lot of these guys on wanting to play in the SEC and playing the highest, the best conference in college football by far. But again, it's like it just goes in a situation where if you're like a Luke Altmaier or like a Rocco Becht, or Josh Hoover, like these guys are like looking in and be like, okay, like Tennessee's got a couple of dogs over at wideout. Brazil's returning. Brazil's an experienced guy. Mike Matthews was a 5-star guy. Travis Smith looks like a good, good wide receiver too. But Darius Jackson as well. But that's 4 guys. That's just 4 guys. And after that, it's just like there's so many question marks. And so, and I hope that we could be able to find a way to be able to get Marion. I think Marion would be an excellent pickup. I think Trayshawn Hurley would be good for depth purposes as well. But sell down, Brando. Sell down. But these are. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But you cannot help but think that I don't know. Let's just say theoretically, we don't get any wide receivers, right? We're going to be playing with essentially 8 guys because I think there's another freshman that comes in over the summer, and then Boo's going to be another guy too that will play frequently over at wide receiver. You got one injury away, and you're talking about you're going to have to potentially play 3 freshmen on top of that, a walk-on who will be also in that rotation as well. And realistically, let's be real. This team, as it's built right now, is probably going to win 7 games next year, in my opinion. Do you think after how much of just absolute fumble from Heupel and the staff and just the lack of depth from the wide receiver room from, additions from Kelsey Pope, you got to think this is a strike one for Heupel, right? At least for me, it is. And I know people were like, well, we made the playoffs last year. Yeah, we did, but let's be real. We made the playoffs because we had an unbelievable defense where a lot of the key guys like Keenan Peely, James Pierce, all these guys are leaving Amari Thomas, and the fact that Dylan Sampson had the greatest rushing season in program history. And you got so much uncertainty going into this fall that I genuinely believe 7-5 is a very high possibility.
Yeah, man. I think they're a couple moves away where they have to make some moves or it's going to kind of get ugly. And the good news is obviously they're saving $1.2 million annually just from paying Nico to Joey, so they do have $1.2 million that they can go out there and float around with. And if guys like Trayshawn Hurry or Keelan Marion, if they do come to Tennessee, I don't even know if they're able to bridge the gap, but it's at least a start. Getting bodies in that room, just like you said, they're one injury away from all hell breaking loose. And yeah, Keelan Marion's a really good returner. He had really flashy at BYU, but now you're battling guys like Florida State, Ohio State. It's becoming more of a, an NIL thing, and how is, Tennessee and the Vol Club able to, communicate with each other, with the staff, of how they've, kind of had some misses, the quarterback situation, what happened with Nico, and, the overall outlook to the media to be able to promise these kids that, one, they're going to be paid fairly, two, they're going to be, getting significant playing time, and three, going to be able to, being, incorporated in this system fairly quickly before the season starts. And going back to like the previous thing, man, I think if, a quarterback like, Luke was able to enter, and you're talking about if they want to be able to come in and compete with Joey, I think if Tennessee was able to swing big, like with a quarterback like that, it would be like an understanding that if you come in, like you're our number one guy, this, has been a temporary kind of, Band-Aid fix. And, it'll probably honestly go a separate way, like we said. But at this point, Tennessee's kind of preparing, to ride with Joey, and having that extra money, being able to get the weapons around him. It's going to take wide receivers, because what's going to happen then? You're going to put Miles Kisselman coming off a torn pec out there with, Deshaun Brain probably having to go out wide, Ethan Davis, just having to rely heavy on your tight ends. And we saw kind of what happened last year, the difference in the tight ends to start the season and kind of later.
Yeah.
So just having the weapons around Joey, and just kind of figuring out who's going to be our quarterback, who's going to be the leader on this team, and how we're going to be able to, Josh Heupel, known for his offense, number 15 last year, and we weren't really happy with that. We were like, okay, what's going on? Josh Heupel, known, having the top 10 offense in the country, and 10 years ago we were like, oh, number 15 offense in the country, like ecstatic about it. But obviously we know the potential of the Josh Heupel offense, and bringing in a brand new quarterback is just, it's going to be pretty
Do you
hard.
think maybe we got spoiled with how special Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt were the first couple seasons he was here, and now we're kind of dealing with like what we're going to be expecting for years to come under the Heupel regime? Because I can't help but think, and I think a lot of people in our fan base tend to forget Hendon Hooker was not a Josh Heupel commit. He committed under Pruitt back in December, and that was like a month before Pruitt got fired. And obviously Heupel was able to keep him there, but even then, like Heupel still didn't feel comfortable with him, taking over the reins at QB. Brought in Joe Milton, started Joe the first couple games until Joe ultimately got a concussion and had to put in, Hooker in, and the rest is history. Like my thing is, man, is that this is a little bit concerning that we've had this many misses. And like, yeah, Joe's in the league. Joe's in the league because he has an absolute freak of an arm, and he could throw a football 150 yards down the field without hesitation. But man, you're talking about we just gave Nico $8 million in a span of 3 years, and it clearly did not pan out. He didn't come out, didn't play at the level that we expected, despite making the playoffs. Left, after one season as a full-time starter. A couple other misses over in recruiting as well. You had an opportunity to get Carnell Tate. We weren't able to get that done either. Do you think it's reasonable to have like a little bit of concern moving forward, like Heupel running the program as far as like talent evaluation goes? Because I feel like we're at a tipping point where this should be the point where like we're taking that next step on being able to compete with teams like Alabama and Georgia and like the Texases, like of the college football world, and be in that same tier. And it seems like this is the tipping point that like we're taking a step back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, especially because we got to the precipice of the college football playoffs, 10-win season, and then obviously losing your biggest investment at quarterback, kind of everything that's kind of been around Tennessee, like you said, they've had misses on the recruiting trail, whether it was a Carnell Tate or a Francis Malgoa, or, just overall, the misses, Jordan Seaton, Ryan Williams late there in the process. I mean, it's happened where Tennessee swung big, for the top guys and used, the Vol Club trying to, land these big talents, and it just kind of doesn't happen. But we kind of saw Josh Heupel in his years past. That kind of gives me some kind of like glimpse of hope. Is he really, after he realizes what he has in spring ball, he goes into the spring portal and he's able to kind of pick and choose. And even though it's not the biggest names or it's not the biggest guys, like he's been able to kind of plug and play these guys, and how he's able to plug and play these holes that the team has going into this year that are obviously more massive than, since Josh Heupel's been here in this tenure. It's going to be a completely different thing. But it kind of points back to just the staff and like what's going on with recruiting, like, the overall, the outcry for the last few years about staff changes. And, guys that are, getting renewed on 1-year contracts or, close to the title. So they're kind of, quote unquote untouchable. I mean, even Nico obviously was, the $4 million issue and not getting a raise, but, they tried to play the card with Chris Lowe that, they wanted staff changes and they wanted more weapons and they wanted, guys around them. And that was also playing a factor. And I mean, hell, like they literally wanted Glenn Ellerby fired. Like, let's just be honest. Like the guy they wanted to fire was Glenn Ellerby. I mean, obviously everyone was upset with Kelsey Pope. How do those guys in a year where Tennessee is already struggling, they lost their star? How did they improve their room? Because all eyes are on them and how they can make it easier for Joey and how they can make this easier for your new transfer quarterback on a 1-year thing and making it all work. I think Josh Heupel is going to have, to look in the mirror. He's going to have to, evaluate who's, in the building with the assistant coaches. And even though we're expected for this year to be house money and, not be a year that Tennessee makes it back to the college football playoffs, if, there's signs that Tennessee needs to move on, they're going to need to move on because like you said, Drew, Tennessee can't have this year be the start of going downward and downward and downward when the trajectory of the football program the past, 3 to 4 seasons has been going astronomically up. I mean, right now we're playing with house money. You got a transfer guy with 4 months notice, but at the same time, we can't, let the program fall from what it is. And I think you have to look in the mirror if, things do go south.
Well, I mean, it's just the lack of production that we've seen in certain, position groups like wide receiver, for example, over the last couple of years. We went from Jalen Hyatt being a Blittenkoff winner, and Cedric Tillman in 2021, absolutely, just being an absolute tank to, I mean, just look at who we've got the last 2 years. I mean, you're talking about like Brew had a great start in 2023 until that horrible injury against South Carolina and was never the same player. Dante struggled, with the injury bug throughout his time here. And, you got guys like Ramel Keaton and Caleb Webb and, Nathan Leacock, who was a big guy coming out of high school as well, where these guys just squirrel Wyatt.
Yeah, I mean,
They just didn't pan out. There's so many duds over the last couple of years. And it's just so shocking to me that, like, Heupel, for whatever reason, has just decided just to continue to give these guys a chance. I understand for Ellerby because the offensive line is a little bit of a different story where it's like you got to have like your guys that you recruit in, and you're not going to always have these guys be instant starters, like 5 stars, and like, it takes years for them to develop sometimes. And we're seeing that paying off right now because, like, from everything that we've heard from spring practice, this offensive line looks good. Like, I don't think the offensive line is going to be an issue this fall, and it should be an improvement from 2024. But and back to the wideout room, it's just you're talking about it, it's such a pivotal role of this offense. I mean, like, you got to have guys that are able to be explosive, that are able to, get space between like their defenders and get open. And like, it just seems like this has been a constant issue for the last 2 seasons. And like, my thing that I'm afraid of is that this is ultimately like what we're just going to have to deal with. Like, and I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case with, just based on what I've heard about Radarius Jackson and Travis Smith, that these are 2 guys that had a fantastic spring. But then again, I mean, how many times have we heard the last couple of years, like, oh, such and such had a fantastic spring. He's been looking great. Looks like he's going to be the ultimate playmaker. I mean, we heard that about Dante, and Dante showed a little bit of that, at the end of the year in 2024, but he couldn't stay healthy the entire season. So, like,
I mean, we really just we don't have any veteran guys. Like we don't have an alpha dog like we're used to having in that room of there being an ex wide receiver. Like we don't have a Juwan Jennings dog mentality on this team, or a Jalen Hyatt Blitnikoff, or even a Cedric Tillman that was a 2-star that grew into a SEC wide receiver. And you're kind of seeing that Tennessee hasn't been able to reload through the recruitment in recruiting at wide receiver. And you had that one original group of, Cedric, Ramel Keaton, Jalen Hyatt, and then obviously they brought in Brew McCoy. But after then, those 4-year guys that had multiple years, I mean, you kind of lost your whole investment last year at the wide receiver room. And obviously at the time, the guys that, left were being divas on social media and we were clowning them. But right now, when we all look on paper, I mean, for both sides, it's like, it looks dumb on both sides. It's like another Chase Burn situation where, feelings got into the way of, probably what's best for everyone. And, Squirrel White's at, Florida State, Caleb Webb at Maryland, Chaz Nimrod. I don't even know I can't even remember where he transferred to. I mean, it's just overall, is everyone going to come out better from this? Is Tennessee going to be better in the wide receiver room? Probably not. They have minimal time to go and add multiple guys with however long they have left, 72 hours to enter into the portal, but obviously working them after that. And what guys that do come out that are high profile guys, that are guys that are able to, contribute at a high level, are they going to want an NIL deal? Are they going to want, a crazy amount of money? How is Tennessee able to, recruit? It's so many factors. And obviously now if you do run and roll with Aguilar, having to make it simple with him and get guys around him that buy into a quarterback and see the stats and the potential in a guy like that, and not the interceptions or what everyone else is talking about. And yeah, Vol guy did point out that his quarterback and his coach, his offensive coach from 2023 and 2024, his coach did get fired in 23. It was a new staff last year, so I mean maybe that had a deal with why his interception numbers were so high and why he wasn't able to play with the star power, because so many guys left after they got a new coaching staff. But obviously UCLA saw something in him to invest $1 million in him. And the good news is coming out of practice is that with the new offensive coordinator from Indiana, that, he was doing really good, was going to be their number one guy. And then obviously the Iamaleava family took college football by, storm and just kind of ruined his whole deal. So it's good that he's able to kind of find a spot, but how this fan base is able to get around him, how our staff is able to invest in him and get him ready is a completely different thing.
You should obviously give him a chance. And, I think everybody, myself included, of course, wants the best for this kid, hope that he's able to, become a legend here. I mean, because, if he does come over here and he does, throw 3,000 yards and 25, 30 touchdowns, he'll be very fondly remembered within Vol Nation for sure, especially after, what we've had to deal with for the past week. So he's going to have a longer leash, I think, than any quarterback that Tennessee's ever had in program history, in my opinion, just based on what has happened, just really since December, but especially since last week. But
it's crazy, man. I mean, thank God for Arkansas that it's not, Madden's not starting for them. But obviously the news before the show, true freshman quarterback Madden Iamaleava, who was committed to UCLA, decommitted from UCLA before signing day, on signing day, went to Arkansas so the family could be closer to Nico in Knoxville. Nico's gone to UCLA, and right after the spring game for Arkansas, Big Nick getting, his youngest son Madden out of Fayetteville, and sounds like everyone's, heading to LA. Just absolute bonkers what that family's done to college athletics and the NIL space in the last week. And just, man, absolutely crazy.
They're completely unserious. And honestly, how much of a joke from UCLA's football staff on allowing Madden to be able to come to UCLA after the fact that he decommitted them on signing day to go sign with Arkansas. It's just, everything about it is just completely comical. And that circus will be quite entertaining over in Los Angeles. So, more power to them. But I'll just say this, and Brando, you know what I'm implying when I say this. There is a reason why Josh Heupel did not recruit Madden at all. I mean, he offered him, but he did not really recruit him at the level compared to other quarterbacks. I think Heupel even knew, even before Madden, and even before Nico entering the portal, that he did not want to deal with this for much longer. And so, I mean, it's best overall for the program in the future, most certainly, but it does not mean that we're not going to feel the sting this fall for sure. But Brando, I guess before we kind of transition over to some good news over on the other side, in Vols athletics, let's get a little bit of our thoughts on predictions on if we're going to get any wideouts. There's been some talks about, a couple defensive linemen visiting and even a linebacker too, which I thought it was a little bit weird. But what do you think at the end of the portal? What is Tennessee's roster going to wind up with as far as additions in the portal go? And what do you think is a realistic expectation as of right now for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got the quarterback. That was the main thing, just the national media and our fan base. But even before then, Tennessee was obviously working, the trenches on the offensive line. They offered, I think a linebacker or two, the Florida State linebacker, and I think even the BYU linebacker this morning. But obviously the ones coming out of the wide receiver room, Trayshawn Hurry, a guy from, San Jose State that, didn't have crazy stats. I think a couple hundred yards and 2 touchdowns on this season, but a 6'4", 190 guy, obviously pretty attractive to Tennessee just because the 3 years of eligibility left and some kind of production. And I think that's kind of what Tennessee's kind of looking for, just, an investment guy that you're going to get, 3 years in, put into the system, and still be able to kind of, grow and see what they're going to turn into. But a big one that kind of was really eye catching was Keelan Mary. And I think when he posted his offer, a lot of people saw that post and kind of saw the name and, just what he was able to do at BYU in the receiver room and the return room. That's a guy that, Tennessee can kind of bring in probably pretty early and kind of, have an immediate impact. I think All-American wide receiver over there. And like we said earlier, Florida State and Ohio State seem like they're showing interest there as well. But that's one that I think, Tennessee can maybe put their, hat in. He's visiting this Friday and Saturday coming up. So getting him on campus really early, right after the portal closes, that's a really good sign. And with most of these guys, you kind of want to get them on campus and get them locked down early. You don't want them to make a visit to another school, get another offer. So if Tennessee's able to kind of get these guys coming into school, coming into campus early, fall in love, make them feel like they're an immediate impact and a guy I need. A guy like Keelan Marion or even Trayshawn Hurry, those would be like immediate wide receiver room impacts. I don't know if Hurry would, start in this room or not, but definitely would be a guy that would see the field. And just overall, Drew, I don't know if you've heard, you said you had guys like the Florida State linebacker and the Syracuse defensive lineman.
Yeah, so I've seen murmurs of the Syracuse defensive lineman. His name is
Rod Watson.
Can't think of it right now. It's been a hell of a day in the work world, at least. But I don't see anything going on with the Syracuse defensive lineman personally. Just knowing the fact that Ohio State is getting into that conversation, and I believe Texas is as well. That's going to be a really, really tough get. And I think you just have to prioritize just really the rooms of concern where, like, there's talent in the defensive line. It's not necessarily as deep as it was last season, but I think it's enough. But the one thing that I don't –
Go ahead. I was going to say Tennessee was actually we were in his final 2 last year, but I think obviously chose Syracuse just from playing time. Tennessee was probably at the time trying to keep him on the line just in case we wanted to swing the tires there. Has a crazy freshman year at Syracuse, and like you said, Ohio State, Texas, I think Tennessee,
Georgia,
are the 3 main teams. Yeah, the 3 main teams right now. But Rodney Garner was obviously a pivotal part there, and I think Coach Chop as well. Heavy recruiting him and just the relationship. And obviously, if you have those names in your top 4 or top 5 now, it's probably going to be an NIL battle on top of that. But Rodney Garner, never count out Rodney Garner, especially in the portal.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, obviously, Rodney Garner and Coach Chop are probably the best, duo, coaching duo in the SEC, and certainly one of the best, defensive lineman coaches in the country by far, for sure. But the one thing that I'm surprised about, Brandon, and I'm sure you probably might agree with me on this, is the lack of talk that we're hearing about as far as like trying to get guys to add in the DB room. I mean, and like we are depleted. I mean, when I say depleted, like my God, we are depleted in a defense back room. Knowing especially the fact that McCoy is probably not going to be back to late September, early October at the earliest. So like halfway through the season. You had to throw in extra money for Gibson to stay over there, and you got Boo, but you're talking about Christian Charles, John Slaughter, 2 guys alone. Even though they weren't expected to make a huge impact, there's still depth pieces that you need. Both left, and I'm just shocked that we have maybe it'll change 72 hours from now, but I'm just shocked that we have not heard anything yet. And because that would have been one of my biggest priorities. I mean, it's quarterback, wide receiver, DB, like in that order. And yet, for some reason, it's like we're getting another linebacker. Like, why? Like, the linebacker room's fine.
Yeah, you got Caleb Beasley coming back. He's going to be fully healthy. And you got, obviously, Jalen McMurray, the Temple transfer, taking an extra slide. You got some guys from last year that kind of taking that next step. And then the DB room, from this year, all the freshmen coming in. I think Caleb Beasley is definitely going to take a huge step. He had his shoulder injury last year. That's a guy that I think is going to be easily in the rotation. Tennessee getting their signal caller back and Jordan Thomas, who missed all of last year at, the safety position. That's a guy that Tennessee is going to be able to have, if he did not go down, we would not have had the Will Brooks breakout season last year. But being able to get Jordan back and healthy is going to be huge for this defense. And then I mean, I think Tennessee definitely wants to add one, but where does it come at, and what kind of body is it? Especially like you said, was Ramon McCoy, making his way back from his ACL injury. Ricky Gibson having to negotiate his contract. It seems like you don't have to worry about him or really anyone else significant, entering for Tennessee. So it's kind of like with these other positions, being able to plug in piece with what you got now. Obviously, not not wanting to overpay, wanting to keep everyone happy. It's just I think Tennessee's going to add one, but I think that they're also optimistic about what they have returning just in that DB room. And I mean, it's really weird because not just the offensive line, but the DB room, it's going to be, these coaches going out of what they have, been accustomed to doing. And that's not playing younger guys. They're going to be forced to play their young guys and play their early recruits and just kind of throw them out there and kind of, see what happens. But I think Tennessee is definitely going to be adding one in the DB room. And like you said, still trying to add a linebacker or two. I think the one we were mentioning earlier, the Louisville standout linebacker, Darius Thomas, he's going to be here Friday and Saturday. So he's the second best available linebacker in the transfer portal. So that's a huge one. And just Tennessee over here, working out multiple names, like we said earlier, all this stuff changes by the hour. I mean, these guys that set up visits and then they cancel them an hour later. The Indiana D line that's, setting up a visit. I think there's a Western Michigan defensive line that's setting up a visit. But, you have these holes and you have a short amount of time. I mean, we're in April. It's April 21st. And, no matter what position they're playing on the field, if they're going to be a significant, impact guy, they're going to have to come in here and learn the system.
Exactly. I mean, like we said, I mean, like we've emphasized this all episode, but like, when you have a guy that comes in January, that gives them being able to go through spring practice and like seeing that firsthand, like how to run, what positions and like, and things like that you have to be able to take care of. It's a hell of a lot easier process than as opposed to like joining in late April, even May in some situations. So fingers crossed we can be able to get the depth pieces that we have. It's not that big of a drop off from our starters, but it's incredibly difficult to be able to get that now. That's just what makes it even more infuriating back in January about the lack of activity that we had in that regard in the wide receiver room and, even the DB room too. So we knew these would be issues that we would have to run across to. And they did a great job in the offensive line room. Don't get me wrong. I mean, offensive line room is fine, but adding only one wide receiver from Amari Jefferson, not really adding anybody in secondary at DB, just really head scratching moves altogether. But Brando, any thoughts about the state of the program before we go over to some better news?
I mean, you just got to fill the holes, and there's obviously pieces that Tennessee's trying to finish as this portal window closes. But I think they're going to be aggressive in these next 72 hours. And I think overall, man, no matter what you're doing, just Tennessee's looking for production. They're looking for experience, guys that have some kind of impact on the field, and those numbers are going to be more attracting than a guy that's just entering or trying to leave a spot. I don't think it might not be the hottest name in the portal. It might not be the top ranked guy, but Tennessee's proven and Josh Heupel's proven that in this spring, window, they evaluate talent, they get production. And it's always, the names we least expect to come in and find a way. And if Tennessee's able to, going out there and, get a Darius Thomas or go out there and get a Keelan Marion. I mean, Keelan Marion, 78 catches, 1,000 yards receiving, 38 kick return attempts, 800 yards returning, 3 touchdowns, a guy with 3 years left. I mean, if you can go out there and win just, one or two of those battles, get a few more guys in the system where if one guy, goes down with an injury, you're not out there playing a walk-on or a guy from Maryville, Maryville High School. I mean, you got to have depth. And honestly, I think we're mostly freaking out about it because it's the Josh Heupel offense, and it's probably the most depleted and most uncertain we are about a Josh Heupel offense in this tenure so far. But I mean, when you look at the offensive line going into next year, when you look at the linebacker room, when you look how Tennessee's been able to recruit at the defensive line, the edge position, overall, man, we're a lot better off than we think. I think this team is, more closer than they are, but it's going to be guys that that are unproven and, are going to have, have to have breakout years at Tennessee. it's on Josh Heupel recruits for the first time in the Josh Heupel tenure. They've been able to get by bringing guys with the portal. There's going to be so many guys that Josh Heupel and this staff have recruited, and it's going to be super telling about what this staff is and is going to be in the years to come. Like you said, is Tennessee able to land those guys and fill enough holes to go out there and get another 8, 9, 10-win season? We'll find out. But right now, Drew, overall, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And at least Tennessee has a quarterback now that these, impact players can be like, okay, maybe, just maybe I have an idea of what I'm getting myself into. But like you said, crazy week in college athletics, especially Tennessee football. From going to the college football playoffs to, after that season, losing your biggest investment, to having to calculate everything and reimagine and revisionize your entire program. It's just this new day and age, man, absolutely bonkers. But at least we do have some good news.
Well, may not be good news for Tennessee football, but for Tennessee basketball, while one program is slowly beginning to be in shambles, Tennessee basketball, on the other hand, is probably the highest that's ever been. And we might be making a third straight Elite Eight appearance next year if the roster we got in. Nate Ament, the number 3 overall player in the country, commits to Tennessee, the highest rated recruit in Tennessee basketball history. I know probably Bernard King would have been higher, but they did not have, surprisingly, recruiting services in the 1970s. But having said that, this kid is 6'10". He plays a mix of a 3 as a 4. I don't know if you've seen his film, Brando, but man, he is quick for a guy that's nearly 7 feet tall. Really, really comfortable dribbling the basketball. And when I say this is a guy that Duke desperately wanted, I cannot emphasize that enough. And so Rick Barnes, a hell of a remarkable pull-off, one of the biggest recruiting victories I think he's ever had, not just in Tennessee, but in his career-wise as well. And this is a guy where Amy has the potential to be like a Michael Porter Jr., that type of, basketball player. And man, if he's anything close like that and what I expect him to be, he is going to be absolutely phenomenal next fall.
Yeah, man, just an absolute massive pickup for Rick Barnes in this program. Obviously, the highest rated commit in Tennessee basketball history. And man, the lead up to this decision and Tennessee being able to pull this off just from the past few weeks, how heavy it kind of was leaning Duke, and Tennessee trying to close the gap there. And I mean, 2 weeks ago, Tennessee was the 3rd team in this race, Drew. I think Duke and Arkansas, they were going neck and neck, and obviously Rick Barnes and the Vol Club. They were being super aggressive, and I don't think I think Rick Barnes is finally using the NIL space, the way he's adapted to this new era. No one thought he would be able to, man, but obviously his experience coaching the last years at Tennessee, the Elite Eight, the past 2 years, just being able to kind of be able to show the vision, and then on top of being able to coach a guy like Nate Ament, with experience coaching the guys like Kevin Durant and the history of putting guys in the league. Just what a perfect fit, man. An absolute huge commitment, man. And I think Tennessee is going to be obviously way better off next year. You got Jacoby Gillespie, Nate Ament. Tennessee's still trying to work Rodney Rice, even though he has a crazy USC offer out there. But this pickup, man, absolutely crazy. And obviously it's more than likely that Nate Ament is a one and done here. He's projected to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. But I truly think that Tennessee just got a mini KD. I think we got only so much more than what we got out of one season out of Dalton Knecht. And if Nate Ament can live up to the potential, man, and Tennessee can add 1 or 2 more pieces to this team, we're talking about. I can't the past 2 years. We said this might be the best years in Rick Barnes. Tennessee basketball.
This might legit be. Drew, this might legit be the beast.
This might legit. I mean,
you talked about the returning pieces he has over in the post play with Okpara, with Estrella, Jalen Curry from Vanderbilt as well, who was outstanding in conference play. He gave us tremendous fits when we had to play Vanderbilt twice. And then, talking about Gillespie, who's the type of guy that is, great ball handler. He actually, I think he was just 1 steal behind Zakai Ziegler last year, 69 steals for the season. So you're going to see the same type of intensity. Obviously, we're going to miss Zakai tremendously, but there's not going to be that much of a drastic drop off. And then, Tennessee's working their magic with Rodney Rice. I mean, USC offered a 60% higher NIL rate, but when you really take into the equation of state income taxes and things like that over in the cost of living in LA, it's about the same amount as what Tennessee offered him. And Tennessee, and Brando, you know this as well, gave him a very, very
Yeah,
lucrative offer. So it's not like we're falling short and
it's over two
yeah,
million.
exactly. And I still expect Tennessee to get a couple more guys, as you mentioned. Duke Miles, he's visiting, I believe, on Wednesday. Oklahoma guard, senior, averaged just a smidge under 10 points a game, shot about 43% from the field, from 3 point line this past season as well. Be a type of guy that could be able to come off the bench, be able to make an impact, something kind of similar esque as to like what Gainey was the last couple seasons. And I think Tennessee's probably going to go after one more guy. I would love for them to get that three player from California, Stokovich, I think was his name. He's an
Yeah, dude,
absolute
he's
dog.
insane.
I don't think Tennessee's going to get him.
Shooting like
Yeah, I mean, he
43%.
was unbelievable. And I don't think Tennessee's going to get him because he'll probably want to start or role himself. But I expect, Tennessee to get at least one more guy that kind of fits that two role, maybe a mixture of a two and a three, whether if that's somebody that's in the portal or potentially somebody overseas as well. But man, I mean, the grand scheme of things, looking at this roster and even seeing some of the additions that we have that are freshmen coming in next year from Mari Evans and Dwayne Brown II, even though these are guys that are more than likely not going to be making, huge impacts, probably average a couple minutes a game, there's not a big drop off in the talent that we've seen in years past from other previous recruiting classes under Barnes and just previous recruiting classes in Tennessee basketball in general. These are still guys that could be able to develop and be great players for us as well. And it'll be interesting to see as well. Bishop Boswell finally being healthy. He had an issue, with his shoulder, throughout most of the year. And so for him to be able to finally get that full, healthy, off-season training, could be able to see, big, tremendous strides. And my God, Brando, I totally forgot. Cade Phillips. Cade Phillips is another guy
Yeah,
that's coming back that, he was talking a
healthy
healthy
JP.
JP. And, Cade was talking about today earlier about how he's shooting around 500 to 1,000 shots a day now, trying to work on his jump shot, trying to work on it and, work on that part of his game. Barnes emphasizing on how much what he's liking to see, what he's seeing so far.
Jalen
Jalen
Carey.
Carey. I mean, this team is going to be damn good. I mean, they need one more point guard realistically and one more guard. But when you look at that starting five, and that starting five is more than likely going to be Gillespie, fingers crossed, Rodney Rice, Ament, and then you're talking about maybe, Jalen Carey or, potentially playing JP and Akbara. I mean, that is a lengthy starting five, and that is a deadly starting five, too.
I'll say this, man. The way that Rick Barnes and the staff has been able to kind of like piece this portal class together, especially with the late addition of Trey Henderson,
Yeah.
the way that it was able to kind of lead the Nate Ament, especially Jacoby Gillespie being able to get in the boat and, recruit, Ament heavy too as well. Having Henderson in the boat, obviously they're working Rodney Rice, Tennessee, obviously they want to add, one more big guy, hosting a couple visits this upcoming weekend. Sometimes just like football, man, we'll have a visit set up for the weekend. And they're like, oh, okay, that guy's not coming here. But obviously, Tennessee had to sacrifice Elijah Freeman, the Lincoln Memorial kid, down the street. But that's a guy that was originally from Florida. It's not like he was an in-state guy. And you get, Nate Ament, try to land Rodney Rice, go out there and get, one more, big guy. And I think Tennessee's going to be sitting really, really pretty. And obviously right now Tennessee's having, look forward and not backward, but just, the tiny possibility that the NCAA can, change the rules overnight and, comply with, the NCAA and the House of Representatives. Kai Ziegler and Jordan Gainey, they're able to sue the NCAA if they wanted to. But I mean, right now, I think Tennessee's looking in the forward direction and obviously trying to recruit, past that. But it's kind of, kind of weird to me that we've seen Meshack, be more NBA friendly with the upcoming combine and, the drafts coming up and stuff like that. But you really haven't seen anything from Gainey or Zakai. They've been pretty quiet since the end of the season. So does that happen? Who knows? But there's a lot of, buzz that they are exploring the option.
Well,
But
I mean,
either
yeah.
way, man, I think Tennessee's way better off than they
Oh
were
no,
last year.
1,000%. Like there's going to be guys coming off the bench that will, there's enough depth, at least, especially in, the fours and the fives, that we could be able to play a full 40 minutes. We don't have to worry about guys that, they're playing 35, 36 minutes a game. As for Zakai's NBA desires, look, I love Zakai. I think Zakai's one of my favorite Tennessee Volunteers of all time. Probably my favorite Tennessee basketball volunteer, next to Chris Lofton, of course. But I mean, the man's like 5'8". Like he's not going to be playing in the NBA. But I'm a little bit curious though on seeing like if they do get that ruling, and it could happen any day. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in July. Do you think if they're able to play, would they entertain the idea on like coming on as walk-ons?
I mean, that's the thing, right? So, like, obviously, it's either they don't have the NBA future, but you could obviously entertain the idea of going overseas and making, good money over there or whatever. But obviously, these guys love Tennessee, man. And the one thing we saw when Tennessee was able to, in the portal pickups when they were picking up guys, like, you remember a couple years ago when they picked up the guy Chris
Yeah,
Ledlum, who was really short lived here, but he ended up leaving two
yeah,
weeks later. Well, Josiah Jordan James, when he came back to Tennessee, he was a walk-on for about 2 weeks, and he ended up getting that scholarship thing. But obviously, Tennessee was able to, help these guys out with, NIL and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure both Zakai and Ganny are Tennessee graduates, so it's not like they're still going to class and stuff like that, or having to be paid for
hmm
tuition. So I'm sure there is that that NIL walk-on loophole. And honestly, I'd be all for it, man. I mean, it'd be absolutely bonkers, just to really think about. But honestly, they would have to be understand what their role would be with Gillespie and Rice, being here if Rice does come to Tennessee. So can you talk about like a two deep of Rice and Gillespie and Ziegler and Gainey? That'd be absolutely insane. And from my understanding, that rolling keeps getting tossed around or whatever, but they have the potential to sue the NCAA for eligibility themselves. So it's just kind of like another Pavia situation where at if they keep wasting time, then they can kind of take it into their own hand. But overall, man, you look at the on paper, and even without those guys, man, if Tennessee does just move forward and it's all a brand new roster, it's still one of the best rosters in Barnes' tenure at Tennessee, man. And you got guys like Jalen Carey who are, coming in that are honestly already forgot about just off Nate Ament and other
yeah.
pickups we've had of, Felix Akpara returning and Katie Phillips returning. I mean, we're going to be stacked down low more than I ever
Oh
thought
yeah,
we
no,
would
I
be.
mean you're talking about we got at least 4 or 5 guys that could be able that we could consistently rotate, stay healthy, not kind of overplay them, exhaust them, and still be able to play at that same level. But yeah, I mean, great
I
stuff.
mean, we were getting pretty bullied there, like late in the SEC tourney and then like early in the tourney, the offensive boards, how they were a problem. Man, Tennessee's able to fix that and have guys, just to be able to be able to feed off our bigs, but two, if you have shooters like Rice and Gillespie, man, being able to kind of play the best of both worlds. I mean, this Tennessee offense, if it can match the defense we've seen under Barnes, I mean, it can be
No,
really
it
crazy.
definitely could. Brando, any last thoughts? Ran the hour mark. I think we covered all
Um,
bases to a T, no pun intended. Um,
really, bro, just honestly seeing what this football staff does, to close the portal out, the interest, if we see any kind of moving parts there with the roster. And I'm sure, we've seen the on three staff. Obviously, they did their victory lap around when Tennessee lost Nico for them, being right. But they've been pretty active here lately with Tennessee's new portal additions and who they're kind of targeting. So just looking out for that. Some new visits being set up. I mean, multiple guys, expected this weekend, kind of seeing how Keelan Marion and Trayshawn Hurry's visits go. And if Tennessee can add in the trenches and the linebacker room. But I mean, basketball is looking good. Expect to see if Tennessee can, try to get, Rodney Rice in the boat. Can Tennessee football, get some portal additions, and then big bounce back week for Tennessee baseball. Obviously lost a series to Kentucky, but big win against LSU in Baton Rouge this weekend, number 6 versus number 7. So that's going to be a big one. And hey, man, it's just, hopefully we can fill these holes. Give me a couple wide receivers. Give me some offensive line depth since Tennessee lost Larry Johnson to the portal. But that just means that David Sanders is probably slated to start as a true freshman. And yeah, man, fill these pieces up on football and basketball, and let's ride it, man. I mean, I think obviously basketball is more appealing than football right now, but I think with some pieces around Joey, if he is our quarterback, if Tennessee's able to get some pieces around him, get a few fall practice clips, and get the fan base around this guy, and I think we'll be all right. But other than that, man, it's the world's not burning yet, Drew. We still got some good things around
I
here. Like I said,
appreciate your optimism, at least for football. I cannot disagree.
it's
I
always
cannot
me,
disagree
man.
more. However, for basketball, it's funny. I'm always the most pessimistic person for football, but I'm the most optimistic person you'll ever meet for Tennessee basketball. It's very very bizarre, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I think just this fan base is going to have to lower some expectations, coming into this fall and just be realistic, at least for the football side of things. But we'll figure it out. I mean, the sun will rise. We'll be all good, and we'll see. Maybe Heupel could be able to work his magic at the end over here and get some couple late portal additions that are so desperately needed.
Yeah, man. Definitely going to be a big one. All eyes, in my opinion, the Keelan Marion visit this weekend. That'd be a huge addition for the wide receiver room, and just see if Tennessee can move the needle, man. I think overall this roster is still this football roster is probably better off than we've had been in the past few years. Just the Josh Heupel offense and going into this year with so much uncertainty in the wide receiver room, the running back room, the quarterback room. I mean, it's weird, man. It's the most amount of question marks we've had in the Heupel era. So, I mean, I haven't had any reason to doubt him. But the whole offensive wizard thing is going to be put to the test this year. He's gonna have to work some magic, man. It's gonna be
No, he
ugly.
definitely has to. But I think I'll wrap it up. Thanks to the near 1,000 people that tuned in tonight for the show. That was pretty awesome. We're gonna try to be able to do a consistent, better job on getting some weekly content in. Obviously, the next week or two, it's going to be pretty damn chaotic as far as college football goes. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of information for us to be able to do some shows on and everything like that. Make sure to continue to follow at Vols_ATB on X, for any show updates and things like that as well. Brando, last final thoughts. I'm exhausted. It's 10 o'clock over here. I got to wake up at 7:30. So let's try to make it quick over here, okay?
Yeah, I mean, the past few weeks has been hell from Nico and his family, but we finally got guys that want to be here and a guy that's going to be here for 1 year that wants to wear the power tee on his helmet. And I think Tennessee is going to come out of this, better off than that they were. They saved more money. They're going to, rebuild around this. And even if it is a bad year in football, I think we probably made the right decision. And I think that I think we're going to be better off, honestly, in the long run. So overall, though, man, no. Biggest pickup in basketball history. Good to be a Vol, and it's going to be crazy next week, man.
Well said, Brando. Well said. I can't top it off better myself.
I try to keep it short for you.
All right. Cheers, y'all. Take it easy. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to try to tune in next week.
Yeah.